1 second. I'm gonna try and get the video working.
Okay. We can see you even though you can't see us. We can see your
Okay.
ear. We can see your ear.
Can you see me right now?
Perfect. Lovely. We can see you entirely.
Oh, the students like that, huh?
Yeah. Okay, fabulous. So I've just given them.
How big is the class today?
We've got about probably 40 students in the end. We had about 70, but it's half term, so it's a break for us during our UK academic year. So we haven't got as many as we hoped. But the ones that are here are doing a wonderful job so far.
Great.
Fantastic. So I've given them an introduction about you, some of the things that you've done and what you're going to be covering with them today. So I'll hand it over to you, if that's okay.
Sure. So what I want to do first is I want to kind of introduce why I'm here, why I'm speaking to you, and kind of my journey. And then we're going to go over personal branding, what it is, why it's important, and the 4-step personal branding process that's in my book, Me 2.0. So basically, I started out in high school, senior year, with my first internship. I was doing cold calling for a small internet company in the United States, in Massachusetts, and made 1,000 calls one summer. Didn't get any sales. I was selling something I was not passionate about. I didn't care about it. So I guess in some ways I kind of gave up. But I realized that I didn't want to do direct sales when I was older or when I was in college. So I started college. It took me a little bit to get in. I applied early decision, which is in the States, it means you commit to one school and you typically have a pretty good chance of getting in there if you're the right person. I didn't get in there at first. I got pushed to regular decision when I finally got in. But when that happened, I got an interview on campus. I wrote them a letter. I did really well in my classes. I did whatever it took to get in there. And so that's kind of a running theme through everything that I've done and everything that hopefully you will be doing. And when I get into college, I took it very seriously. First semester, I worked extremely hard. I got straight A's, which is big because I went from a B student in high school to an A student in college. And I realized it was going to be tough to get a job when I graduated. So I started plugging away trying to get work experience, which work experience in the employer's eyes is always deemed as more important than education in the classes you take. Because the experience is really what you're going to be doing on the day job anyways. So I got my first 2 internships through connections locally through my family. And you shouldn't be afraid to ask your family and friends to refer you or hire you, because you need to get in the door somewhere. And after I got these few internships, I started using that experience and everything I had been doing to get more internships. So I ended up having 8 internships by the time I graduated. Now during the internships, or to get the internships, I'd have my own website, I'd have my own business card, even though I was just a student, which I recommend that you do because it separates you from the pack. Most people don't do it, so it's a way to stand out. I had the resume that was not typical. Don't use resume templates that everyone uses. Use your own. If you have work experience, put that as close to the top as you can. So resume, cover letter. I had a references document with people who I knew would endorse me and recommend me for positions. I had a CD portfolio of work because I had my own small business, like consulting for small businesses, doing websites and graphic design. So that was what I was into at that point. So I took all of that, I put it on a CD, I customized the CD, and I go into these interviews with all of these materials. So the employers took me more seriously. They thought it was creative. I was, of course, applying to marketing positions, so it would look even better. And I kept getting internships. The hardest one that I got was at Reebok. Adidas owns Reebok, big company. And it took me a year and a half to get in there because at a company like that, it's typically the interns and the senior vice president's sons and daughters. So the first time I didn't get in there after a few interviews, I said, okay, I'm gonna blow up my resume. I'm gonna make it incredible. I'm gonna make myself into someone who they have to hire. And I eventually got in there after several interviews a year and a half later. But the one thing I was not doing in college that I should have done, and I made some good moves. Like I went to career services and because I was a good candidate, they would put me in touch with some alumni, but a lot of that didn't pan out. Anyways, the career fairs, those didn't really have much of an impact. You know, what could have had an impact for me was networking events, and I avoided them because I'm very introverted. I'm not outgoing in that way, and I don't like networking. Back then to me was just asking for favors, and that was not something that I wanted to do. So by avoiding that, my job search turned into 8 months to get a job out of college. This was back in 2006. I met 15 people for 3 different positions at this company, EMC Corporation, which is a top 10 technology firm, Fortune 200 tech firm. And I mean, I got rejected from the first 2 positions, but I kept fighting for it because I really wanted to work for the company and I really wanted a job in marketing. So I put all my energy towards getting a job at that company. And eventually I got the 3rd position. But during that last set of interviews, what was most interesting was when they skimmed my resume and they, you know, at the smaller positions, I got a lot of experience. At small companies, you get your hands dirty, you can do many different things. And at the large companies, you're really stovepiped in. You can only do X, Y, Z. You only have certain responsibilities, and you can't really do other things unless you really push yourself and really fight for it. But as an intern, that's almost impossible. So they looked at my resume. I really didn't do much at Reebok. I still admit it to this day. It was very, you know, administrative. At a company like that in marketing, it's really hard to get the really good work because that's what everyone else is doing. So they looked at everything on my resume and their eyes stopped at Reebok because Reebok is a global brand. They were familiar with the brand, and because my name was associated with the brand as someone who interned there, it gave me credibility, and they ended up hiring me. Not just probably because of Reebok, but that certainly helped. Now, if I had no brand name companies on there, it wouldn't have been as powerful. But to get into a big name company and to get experience and everything there, it means something to employers. So I always say, if you can, attach yourself to a brand as soon as possible. So work for a big company, for an internship, or when you graduate, just as soon as possible. And you can always break into a smaller company. So a lot of people do this. They start at big companies, and then for their next job, they'll go into a smaller company, but have a bigger position at a smaller company because that's just typically how it works. And then during my time at EMC doing product marketing, I started a blog later that year in October. So I got the job in July, and I started a blog called Driven to Succeed in October, which eventually became the personal branding blog after I read Tom Peters' Brand Called You article, which was written on the cover of Fast Company magazine back in August of 1997. When I read Tom Peters' article, it called out to me. Basically, he said, you have to be the chief marketing officer for the brand called you. At the end of the day, success lies in your hands. You need to be the CEO of your own career. And I just knew that everything I've been doing with self-marketing and marketing myself could be tied to this overall concept of personal branding. And then I could become this young professional who could carry that message to the new generation. So that night, I came home from work, started the blog, and within 6 months, I was writing 10 to 12 blog posts a week on top of the full-time job. I started an online TV show, which was pretty amateur, but it was good practice, and it was just another thing I was doing. And then I started writing articles for some magazines and online sites like About.com, Brand Week magazine, and American Marketing Association. So several different ones, and I do a lot more of that now. I did that, and then I started the Personal Brand Awards, which was giving recognition to people who are already successful online, building their brands using social networking tools like Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and those type of tools. And then I started and I published the first issue of Personal Branding magazine, and this is from March to August 2007. And once I did that, Fast Company came right after me, and they interviewed me and profiled me for a story that reflected everything I did in 6 months. And it was 10 years to the day when Tom Peters' article originally came out. So what ended up happening was EMC, the company I was working for full time, had no idea what I was doing outside of work because it was more of a hobby. It wasn't thinking about how am I going to make $1 billion off of this idea. And so I kept it away from them. It was important. And the article cited me as an employee of EMC for my day job, and EMC PR got wind of it because they had alerts, they tracked that type of information. They sent it to a vice president who was starting to get interested in social technologies and use them internally and externally for the company's benefit. And the interesting thing was, at my position at that time, I was trying to be like, oh, I understand social media, I can help the company out, but I couldn't really position myself to do that because it was just really complicated. I was so busy with what I was currently doing. So now I was recruited to be the first social media specialist back in November 2007 for the company, which was great because I went from going into work saying, hey, what do you need me to do today, to people coming in saying, hey, Dan, we're doing this project, can you help? So that's a completely different work experience. I felt very empowered. I was basically doing work and getting paid based on what I was passionate about outside of work. And so that was great. And what was interesting was I thought I had to interview for this position, but when I came in, I had a press kit, I had articles I had published, I had so much material, and I just wanted to really blow them away. They were already going to hire me anyways. I didn't need to do any selling at that point because the third-party endorsement sold me. And I thought that was fascinating. That was kind of my introduction to PR in the real world and the impact it can have. So I got this position, and this inspired me to write Me 2.0, which is my book, which is in the second edition now in 9 languages. And what I did was I kind of wrote the book. I got rejected by 70 agents and 2 publishers, but I kept doing it. I kept pushing forward because a lot of people at that time were complaining that they couldn't get jobs. They didn't know, they were kind of lost in their careers. So I figured I could come out with something substantial based on my blog and everything I had produced that could really help people. And then, what was it? So the book came out in April 2009, and then end of January 2010, I turned the book and a speaking career and consulting career into a full business called Millennial Branding. So that's really how I came to be in this position right now. Now I do several things at my company, full service personal branding agency. We work in 4 countries and have several clients in different professions and industries. And personal branding is really the process by which we figure out what makes us special, and then we communicate that to the right people through various mediums. Like a lot of people do it right now. I'm doing it through, a video conference, video chat. Whereas you can communicate your brand and who you are, what makes you special through a blog or social networking sites, or networking events, or there's just a million different ways to do it. But you really have to put yourself out there, and that's what I learned throughout my experience, is you just don't know what's going to happen unless you try something. Not everyone can or should be an entrepreneur, but you can use these practices to grow your career at a company in whatever profession, whatever industry, or if you want to be a consultant or a full entrepreneur, they're all going to help you. And so personal brand is, everyone has a personal brand, whether it's celebrities, whether it's politicians, or whether it's you. And you have the ability through the online platforms to get yourself out there in a way that is very personal and reflective of who you are. So if you think about it, personal and professional really coming together right now through technology. So it's not just about your professional identity anymore. It's about the proper mix of a personal and professional brand into a personal brand. And online, you have to be careful about what you say and how you represent yourself, because whatever you publish online is going to stick with you for the rest of your life. Think about what Facebook's doing. All your profiles become timelines. So things that you published and shared years ago are going to creep right back up into your timeline and be visible to whoever's following you, or if your profile is public, whoever can find you. And people are searching for you online. It's not just about submitting your resume now. It's about being found. And that's a huge difference between the recruitment of years ago, the recruitment of today. Almost 90% of recruiters are using social networks to recruit and to get new candidates. And employers are using the social networks, especially Facebook, to conduct background checks. They have piles of maybe hundreds or thousands of resumes. Google probably gets thousands of resumes. And in order to narrow it down, one of the things they do is they review your online presence. And if they deem that you were not a good fit for the corporate culture, then you're out of the pile. So I think it's more important now than ever before to craft your brand and to monitor and grow it over time. Because you're going to see in the future, recruitment is not going to be about submitting a Microsoft Word resume into a job board. Recruitment is going to be more about presenting yourself online, optimizing your profiles so you're found based on what you want to do. Because when you submit a resume to a job on a corporate website or a job board or a classified ad in a newspaper, it's probably not going to be the exact job you want. Whereas if you position yourself as so-and-so expert or someone who's an enthusiast or a spokesperson or someone interested in a certain topic, and you keep writing about it through a blog and you showcase your experience and everything you've done, then you're going to attract the right opportunities because you're going to have the keywords, you're going to be positioned for success. So that's interesting. And the way I split personal branding up is through a 4-step process. So the first step is discover. It's about discovering your brand, being able to articulate who you are, what you do, and what makes you special. And we call this a personal brand statement. So for my original personal branding statement was personal branding spokesperson for Gen Y. So it's what are you an expert in, and who's your audience? So for me, my audience is people like you. And so when people see on my online profiles, Dan is an expert in this and he's targeting my age group, I'm really calling out to those people so they're more inclined to go with me than someone who's more of maybe a generalist or is geared more to the older demographic. Because I'm 28 years old, so I'm part of Generation Y. I can relate to them much more. I graduated a few years ago. It makes more sense for me rather than me targeting, maybe CEOs of large companies. It would be a harder pitch for someone like me. So you have to know who you are to the fullest extent. You have to know what you can provide as well. And everyone, more and more, almost a third of people right now consider themselves free agents. It's the latest report by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And so what we're seeing now is, everyone is more of a freelancer. You're going to see fewer and fewer full-time positions with benefits in the future. It's going to be more of, the consultant, the freelance person. And so you kind of need to prepare yourself now. You need to get the skills, you need to get the education, and then you have to put yourself out there. So discover brand is about, describing yourself and letting people know who you are. It's about controlling perceptions, because the reality is that people already view you a certain way, and the more and more that you can show who you are and think about how you want to present yourself, the more that people will perceive you in that way. And that's what's going to help you build your career too. Discover your brand is about having a game plan, really figuring out what your short-term and long-term goals are, what you want to accomplish in 2 weeks versus what you want to accomplish in 4 years, and making sure those align so the short-term goals help you build up to the long-term goals. Thinking about what you can do every single day to get you to the next step, the next day, to build a better tomorrow, basically, for yourself. And to think of yourself as something, as a product, as something that needs to be marketed over time, and then every victory you have, growing your brand. So if I get an article published, I'll put that published article on my site and share it through the social networks, because it just keeps on growing the brand and showing what I can do, so it attracts more and more opportunities, and everything you do becomes your own portfolio of work that you can share to the world. Create your brand is the second step in the process, and creating your brand is all about developing a personal branding toolkit. So these are the materials that I brought in when I was interviewing in college to get positions. But this is for you with right now, 10 years from now, etc. You need your own website. Hopefully, maybe it's a blog so you can start networking. And that's really the key to all of this. The reason why you need online profiles and maybe a blog and other tools is because they allow you to network. And that's the real way you get jobs. You get jobs through people. So by sharing your ideas online through blogging and social networking, other people will react to them, and it'll give you conversation starters in general. And so what that does is you can formulate relationships with people who have shared interests, and those can create potential job opportunities for you, whether that person can hire you or whether that person can refer you. So creating your brand is about creating your online identity, putting out, your profile picture, putting out, a summary of your work and your experience. It's about creating a business card. It's about creating, maybe a CD portfolio if you're in the creative field, resume, cover letter, everything you need in order to convince an employer to take you seriously and to show that you know what you're talking about and that you have some credibility. And those materials aren't effective if they just sit there. You have to constantly market them and present them to other people. So the communicate stage is where you do that. When you do the communicate stages, once you know your brand, you know how you want to position yourself, what your expertise is and all that, and you have the materials together, then the next step is you need to get yourself out there. You need to present yourself. You have to go to networking events. You can speak publicly. You use the social networks to network and meet new people. Just constantly do whatever you can to just get yourself out there. And the best way is to be very specific with the type of events you want to go to conferences. You can start your own. You can join an association. You can do philanthropy work. The object is to meet new people, and not just anyone, but the right people, the people who have shared interests, maybe the people who are working for companies you're interested in. And before you go into a networking event, if it's a meetup group or you're using Eventbrite or some other service, you should review who's going to that event, and then you should definitely seek out those people. And then is about maintaining a positive brand that's reflective of the true you for the rest of your life. So as you grow and develop, you get new endorsements, you get internships, you get new jobs. You want all of that to be presented online. You want to show people and you basically want to showcase your story. That's really what interviewing is all about, is telling your story. What you've done in the past, what you're doing right now, and what you hope to get out of maybe working at that company. That's the logic. You need to tell the story. How did you come to apply for this position, and why should you get the job? Your whole backstory should explain and answer that. So maintaining your brand is also about setting up alerts to review what's being said about you online, using google.com/alerts to see what's being said about you in Google News and Google Blog Search, using a site, search.twitter.com, to see what's happening in real time and what people are saying about you. And this is most effective when you're already active online. Also, if you want to communicate, we'll just go back to communicate for 2 seconds. If you want to write articles like I've done for several sources, I've written for Wall Street Journal, Business Week, and several other sources. What you do is you start small. So you start at a small blog. You comment on that blog as much as you can, so the blog owner knows who you are and that you have something valuable to say. And then you write for that blog. You take that published article and you use it to get your next opportunity, and you just keep building that way. So every victory builds into a case study and a link, so you can, once you pitch for your next project, you'll have more to pitch about and to show people. It's just like anything else. Your first internship, your first job, your first published article is the hardest to get because everyone's looking for a track record. So if you start small, even getting an internship, an unpaid internship, just do whatever you can to get that first set of experience. So what you can do is you can leverage that into a better, higher paying position later. And that's basically sacrificing for the potential of getting high rewards later. I just want to go over right now before we get into the next part of this presentation.